Guys, so we are moving right along into solving for x or solving for our variables. So we have learned about factoring, we've learned about distributing, we've learned about finding our like terms and simplifying. And now what we're going to do is we are going to be adding and subtracting to find x. Now, there's something I want you to think about as we start this lesson. I want you to think about what is the opposite of addition. To undo addition, what would you do? If I had, to undo addition, what would you do? You would subtract. To undo subtraction, you would add. To undo subtraction, you would add. There are two different properties that you need to know as we begin the rest of this chapter. The first one is called the addition property of equality. I'm going to write them on the board, but I'm also going to make a Google Doc for you guys with the definitions, and you'll need to copy those into your notebook. But the addition property of equality, I'm going to write the add prop of addition property of equality is what this says. And this is saying that if A equals B, then A plus C is equal to B plus C. Okay, I know these are letters, but let's think about this. If a number is equal to a number, adding the same number makes them equal. What does this look like in real life? If 2 is equal to 2, then 2 plus 3 is equal to 2 plus 3. If 2 is equal to 2, then if I add 3 on this side of the equal sign and add 3 on this side of the equal sign, it's the same thing. The addition property of equality. Another thing that you need to know is the subtraction property of equality. The subtraction property of equality. The subtraction property of equality states that if A equals B, then A minus C is equal to B minus C. If one side of the equal sign is equal to the other side of the equal side, which it is because there's an equal sign, then A minus a number is equal to B minus a number. In numbers, if 2 is equal to 2, 2 minus 3 is equal to 2 minus 3. If I subtract 3 from both sides of the equal sign, I'll get the same thing. If they were originally equal to each other, if I subtract the same number from both sides of the equal sign, I'll get the same thing if they are equal to each other. So, how does this work for solving for x or y or whatever variable that you have in your equation? We're working with equations now. You're going to be seeing equal signs, and now we want to find what x is. So if we had a problem like x minus 5 equals a negative 1. We had this, x minus 5 equals negative 1. Think about this. What are we trying to do? What's your goal in this? Our goal is to find what you can put in here to subtract from 5 to get negative 1. What do we put right here? What number can we put in for x that if we subtract 5 from, we get the answer of negative 1? Here's where these properties come into play. You need to solve for x. To solve for x, solving for a variable. For a variable. To solve for a variable, your first step is to get your variable alone. You guys need to get your variable alone to solve. So to solve for x, to figure out what x is equal to, we need to get x by itself. So we need to undo our subtraction and get x by itself. The opposite of subtraction is addition. So we add 5, and now x is by itself. But that 5 didn't just disappear. Just like fractions and what you do to the bottom of the fraction, you do to the top of the fraction. What you do to one side of the equal sign, you do to the other. It says it right up here. What you do to one side of the equal sign, you do to the other. So we added 5 over here. We need to add 5 over here. Add 5. What's -1 plus 5? -1, okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, a positive 4. Bring down your equal sign. What is 4 equal to? What were we solving for? X. We were solving for X. The big thing, 7th graders, the big thing that we need to work on and remember is that what you do to one side of the equal sign, you have to do to the other. What you do to one side of the equal sign, you have to do to the other. So let's try another example. Let's try another example here. If I had p minus 5 equals -2. Okay, p minus 5 equal to a -2. So we want to solve for the variable. It's our goal. We want to find out what p is. So what do we want to do? We want to find out what number we put in for p. If we subtract -5 from that number, equals -2. So what do we have to do? We need to get p by itself. So it looks like we're subtracting here. So to get p by itself, we need to do the opposite of subtraction. The opposite of subtraction is addition. So we add 5 over here, and that gets p by itself, right? Because -5 plus 5 is 0. So p's alone. But remember the addition property of equality. What you add to one side of the equal sign, you add to the other side of the equal sign. The addition property of equality states that what you add to one side of the equal sign, you add to the other side of the equal sign. So I need to add 5 to -2. -2 plus 5, 3. -2 plus 5, 3. Let's look at another example. X minus 5 over 6 equals 1 over 6. Okay, take a deep breath, 7th graders. I know these are fractions, but you are very capable of doing these. No, these are fractions, but you're very capable of doing these. So we need to get x by itself because we want to know what number we put in here if we subtract -5 over 6 from gives us 1/6. So it's the opposite of subtraction, addition. So we add 5 over 6. We add 5 over 6. Aren't you so lucky that you already have common denominators? Because remember, you need common denominators to add your fractions. So we spent so much time working with fractions because they come into play here. So now it's 1/6 plus 5/6. Remember, you keep your common denominator and you add the numerator. So 1 plus 5 is 6 over your common denominator. Oops, excuse me, 7th graders, let me write it down here. 6 over 6 equals x. What does 6 over 6 simplify to? X equals 1. X equals 1. Let's try a few more. I want to look at a few more with you guys here. Okay, let's say I had something like, let's look at this. I have -14 equals Negative 14 equals k plus 6. Now, I need to identify my variable and see what I need to get by itself. So our variable has always been on the left side of the equal sign at this point. But your variable can be anywhere on any side of the equal sign. So your goal is simply to get it by itself. It doesn't always have to be on this left side over here. It can be on the right side. Your goal is simply to get it by itself on one side of the equal sign, whether left or right. So, how do you get it by itself? You need to do the opposite operation that is happening. So if you see, we're adding 6 over here. The opposite of addition, subtraction. The subtraction property of equality says that what you do to one side of the equal sign, you have to do to the other side of the equal sign. What you do to one side of the equal sign, you have to do to the other side of the equal sign. So the addition or the subtraction property of equality would say that if you subtract 6 from this side, you have to subtract 6 from this side as well. If you subtracted 6 from the right side of the equal sign, you have to subtract 6 from the left side of the equal sign. You have to do the same thing to both sides of the equal sign. So it's negative 14, take away 6 more. Negative 14 minus 6. Negative 20 equals k. Negative 20 equals k. Your goal, solve for whatever variable by getting it alone on one side of the equal sign. What you do to one side of the equal sign, you have to do to another. I'm going to put your homework on Google Classroom. It's going to be your workbook pages over this section. You'll be doing a lot of this, and then you'll be putting your answers into Google Classroom so that I can see. But remember, get your variable by itself, and what you do to one side, you need to do to the other.